Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, continuation of discussion of 12th chapter, text number 11. Translation. If, however, you are unable to work in this consciousness of me, then try to act, giving up all results of your work, and try to be self-situated. Purport. It may be that one is unable even to sympathize with the activities of Krishna consciousness because of social, familial, or religious considerations, or because of some other impediments. If one attaches himself directly to the activities of Krishna consciousness, there may be objections from family members or so many other difficulties. For one who has such a problem, it is advised that he sacrifice the accumulated result of his activities to some good cause. Such procedures are described in the Vedic rules. There are many descriptions of sacrifices and special functions of punya or special work in which the result of one's previous action may be applied. Thus one may gradually become elevated to the state of knowledge. It is also found that when one who is not even interested in the activities of Krishna consciousness gives charity to some hospital or some other social institution, he gives up the hard-earned results of his activities. That is also recommended here because by the practice of giving up the fruits of one's activities, one is sure to purify his mind gradually, and in that purified stage of mind, one becomes able to understand Krishna consciousness. Of course, Krishna consciousness is not dependent on any other experience, because Krishna consciousness itself can purify one's mind. But if there are impediments to accepting Krishna consciousness, one may try to give up the results of his actions. In that respect, social service, community service, national service, sacrifice for one's country, etc., may be accepted so that someday one may come to the stage of pure devotional service to the Supreme Lord. In Bhagavad Gita we find it stated, yatak pravrittir bhutanam. If one decides to sacrifice for the supreme cause, even if he does not know that the supreme cause is Krishna, he will come gradually to understand that Krishna is the supreme cause by the sacrificial method. Athaitārapyasaktosi kartum madhyogam ashrita sarva karma phalad tyagam tatakuru yatatmavan. If, however, you are unable to work in this consciousness of me, then try to act, giving up all results of your work, and try to be self-situated. In the previous verses, we found Krishna is making a line of hierarchical discussion from better to worse of what is the topmost platform of action, and then how it diminishes, or how you go to a lower platform of action, but still connected with the process of advancement. In other words, all of the different kinds of actions which can bring one to advancement. Advancement towards the supreme goal of Krishna consciousness. As you remember, the first and topmost and most important activity is to think of Krishna always, remember Krishna always, and always be absorbed within Krishna in transcendental love. That is admittedly difficult, especially since one may be in a contaminated stage. Therefore, the next stage is given by Krishna. If you can't do that, then you practice the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, by which you will gain gradually enough purification to become very much eager to get to the platform of pure love of God. In other words, you may not get there directly, so now you take a process by which you can directly go there. But if you can't do that, then you accept the process of working for Krishna and giving up the fruits of work for Krishna, working with the consciousness that I'm working for the Supreme, and the fruits of my work are meant for the satisfaction of the Supreme. This is the point of renunciation of works. That one will know that he's working for Krishna, but he's doing it by working and giving the results. Because he's inclined towards Krishna consciousness, he's got an understanding of Krishna's position as the Supreme Lord and the fact that we are his humble servants. He knows that Krishna is the Supreme and he should worship him, but he's not yet able to follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga because they may be a little frightening, or he's just not strong enough. So on that platform he works for Krishna and gives the results to Krishna, or some portion of the results to Krishna. But if you can't do that, all is not lost. And today's verse tells how even if you can't work for Krishna, well, you can do something. Krishna is very liberal. There's a very liberal description he's giving. Do this, if you can't do this, do this. If you can't do that, do this. If you can't do that, do this. We're pretty much way down there. It's way down in the hierarchy. We're down pretty near the bottom right now. Krishna says, well, if you cannot work for me in the consciousness of renunciation to some extent, then just give up the results of your work to something decent. And gradually you'll develop the idea that you should not work for fruitive results. And there's something higher. There's a higher purpose to work. Then one becomes a little detached. In other words, if in the beginning you want to work for yourself, that is just pure sense gratification. But if you can understand the point of becoming detached from the fruits of your work by giving to, let's say, some hospital or some school or some charitable institution, then after some time of this, and the time scale is not given, perhaps a couple of lifetimes, perhaps one lifetime, and perhaps within this one lifetime, indefinite. But sometime, someday, you may become interested in performing work for the best institution, the institution which brings about the development of love of God within the bhakti process of yoga. So, simply by giving to some institution, that's okay. But after a while, one starts to wonder, well, which institution will be the best institution? Or which group of persons is the best group of persons to donate to? And then one finds Krishna consciousness and donates to Krishna consciousness. Then he's immediately in the next category higher. So there is a very clever understanding here, a very good, sound logic, that just get in the mood of giving, and then gradually try to understand what's the best way to give, and then one will have no problem. We find that this concept of renunciation is very difficult even for the contaminated persons to perform. They don't even want to give 1 penny to anybody. They're holding on to it like anything. Charity is not part of the culture in the Western lands. Although a lot of people will give for an emergency. They make donations for emergencies and things like that. Or somebody has some small charity. Because it's good for your taxes. When you give money to charity, then even though one is thinking he's giving to charity, the fact is that it's good for his taxes. He's thinking of it in the mind. Because he can deduct it from his taxes, and it takes him out of certain brackets, puts him in other tax brackets, tax statuses, which are much more favorable. So, in this way, people aren't even giving with the sake of with the idea of renunciation. They're giving with the idea of getting benefit. That's not even this platform. If you give with the idea of getting benefit on your taxes, if you give with the idea of getting benefit in your community, just like some people, if you want to get a job in a certain government institution, you have to give a donation to the political party that's in power. Then they will hire you for the job. So that's also charity. But that's not charity at all. That's a payment. Similarly, somebody may make a payment because socially he must. That if you have a friend who has a favorite charity, then you must donate to that charity if you want to keep friendship with that person. Just like the businessmen go from office to office to their friends. And they come in and they say, "Dear sir, my dear friend, I have this charity." And the friend knows immediately he's got to pay. He doesn't even listen very long. He just whips out his checkbook, throws it on the table, says, "How much?" This is the way of collecting. We know this art ourselves. We had done the same thing in India in making life members. We were very lazy in the collecting business. So all we used to do is go to some men, make them life members. Then I used to get them together in a little club. And then we used to walk together down the street from place to place. And after a while, we used to get feared. They used to fear us like anything. When they saw me with my group, sometimes 3 or 4 or 5 men, we would just march into an office. They would surrender on the spot. They knew there's no way to defeat this crew. So they just say, "How much?" Pull out the checkbook. Then sometimes we get that person to come with us too. Because the people, they think like this. They think, "Well, I had to give. Well, I know. I'm going to get that guy to give too." So then he comes along and we all march into the office of this next guy. And he goes, "Oh no. How much?" In this way, we were terrorizing various sections of Bombay one year because of this technique. So people, they understand this principle simply from the basis of social pressure. By social pressure, you can get anybody to do anything. Then there's also family pressure. Family funds, foundations, charities, trusts. In this way, most charity that goes on in the world today goes on simply because it gives benefit to the one who gave charity. Or if there's some selflessness involved, which there is sometimes. Of course, now there's another point, the psychological thing, that some people feel good by giving charity. So they get a good feeling like this. So then, that feeling makes them want to do it. That they feel good. Maybe it's okay that others are helped too. But I feel good, therefore I will do this charity. So this is also not exactly the platform of renunciation. Real renunciation, to fit this verse, then that means you just give the results of your work without expectation of return. Yata Atmavan means be self-situated. It means don't depend on external things to give you satisfaction. Don't depend on your activities and fruit of results to give you satisfaction, even if it's under the name of charity. In other words, don't do charity thinking in any way it's going to get you anything which one wants. Rather, simply do it out of duty, for the sake of giving in charity alone, without any expectation of return, either psychological, emotional, social, familial, or tax benefit, or becoming famous, or having your name listed on the newsletter. Yeah. Completely detached from one's own self-interest. Now, this group of persons is very small. Because everybody has got some idea to get something that he will enjoy. But maybe, there's some small percentage of persons, and there is, I'm sure, who do it simply out of love for others. Such a person has the possibility to come to Krishna consciousness quicker than other persons, because he simply wants to do things for others. But after doing things for others for a while, seeing how it's frustrating, how it's very hard to help others. Just like when they had this Ethiopia, just recently. Yeah, Ethiopia, okay. And Sudan, all right. You can see how much I'm up on the news. Anyway, so one part I do know about. They managed to induce people to give hundreds of millions of dollars. Hundreds of millions of dollars. But when they went there to see if the people actually got it, they were very frustrated because it hardly got to anybody at all. The government was simply taking it away and stealing it. They would not allow any institutions to come in and do work. They said, we'll do it ourselves. They gave themselves very big salaries. They bought very nice trucks for themselves. They bought nice containers for all the food. They gave out a little bit, and the rest of it nobody ever saw again. Very big scandal. Extremely big scandal. Yeah. There was one big man in Germany, very big actor, who was a very big charity collector. He was ruined because of this. Because none of the money he collected got to the thing he was supposed to give it to. And he was just ruined. It was all stolen away. It's a known fact. When you give charity to third world countries, if you get 0.01% to those people, you're considered doing pretty good. 95% of the income for like the Red Cross is used in administration, down to the last bit. And then the smallest percentage is used for people, if at all. I remember once there was a huge shipment to India of ghee from the West. None of it got to anybody. It all went on the market, and you had to pay 20 rupees a kilo for that ghee. It even said right on the can that you bought in the store, donated by the EEC. But you have to pay 20 rupees a kilo. The price for normal ghee is 15 rupees a kilo. So we find that this is a big problem all over the world. And everybody knows about it. It's just like some kind of a business arrangement. Therefore, when somebody's a little intelligent and he understands, here I am working like anything to save the this and save the that, and feed the these and the feed the those, and the clothes and the housing and the this and the that. When they find out at the end that they're just simply being cheated, then they start to wonder, what is the point anyway? How do you help people in this world? Then they start to calculate a little bit. Then they start to come to some kind of a conclusion. They understand that actually you can't help others in this world because world is just made of cheating. Cheaters and cheated. And then one starts to understand the only way you can really help somebody in this world is to educate him as to what the factual position of this material world is and how to overcome the defects of this material world. In fact, Srila Prabhupada's life, when he was in the teenage youth and the beginning 20 years, just before he met his spiritual master, he was a follower of Gandhi and Gandhi's non-cooperation movement. He was wearing only hand-milled cloth, local produced, to protest against the British cloth He did not pick up his diploma from the Scottish college, although he graduated from the university, because it came from a British college, and he did not want to have his diploma from a British college. He was protesting like others were protesting. But when he met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati showed him the falsity of political protest. Because one form of politics replacing another form of politics does not help anybody. It simply produces more politics. Therefore, and it was seen that way in India too, he was defeated by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta in various ways, and he gave up that idea and started to serve his spiritual master. Although he did not officially accept him as spiritual master, within his heart he did. And he followed that lead to not be entangled within the material existence. That the real way to help others is to bring them to the point of Krishna consciousness. Yeah. We also had such an experience, being a flaming revolutionary in our youth, in various ways. Social worker, teacher of the underprivileged. We were all absorbed and wrapped up in these things until we met Krishna consciousness and realized that what a waste of time. Yeah. So we made so many revolutions, big deal. And at the end, what did you get? Nothing. In fact, this whole revolution, as we have mentioned before, was simply very glorious. All the girls really liked revolutionaries. The revolutionary girls liked the revolutionary boys, and the charity worker girls liked the charity worker boys, and it was all a big show. To have fun, to smash the school to pieces, to blow up a few police cars, to get your name in lights. We were actually in the headlines throughout the country, our little revolutionary crew. We were expert at blowing up police cars. You'd be surprised how many leaders of this Krishna consciousness movement used to do that. Before joining. In the revolutionary days of the 60s in America, where if you weren't a revolutionary, you didn't exist. But the whole thing was seen to be a complete waste of time. Total waste of time. What is the use? Yeah. And we accomplished nothing, absolutely nothing, except had a lot of fun. Didn't learn anything in school, because never really went to school. Didn't accomplish a thing. Just made trouble for ourselves and everyone else. And at the end, was anybody benefited? No. Nobody. And at the end, did it ever make a difference? No. Simply, everything went on in the same exact way. The revolutionary professors were having sex with the revolutionary student girls. And it never changed. They kept going on. Whoever was to be considered a great reformer simply did it for the sake of name and fame and nothing more. And when it didn't work anymore, so they did something else. And the whole thing was a big flop. Nowadays, if you go in America, even 10 years ago, it was already finished. Not 10 years ago, 15. Actually, 15 years ago, it was already dead. Yeah. And you go, nobody remembers anything of this revolutionary business. They can't even remember what happened. They can't even remember why you would do such a thing. They think the only goal of life is to make money, which is exactly the way it was before too. It seems like there was a little warp in time, and into this time warp, Srila Prabhupada slipped in. It was almost as if Krishna just held back the Kali Yuga, made a little warp in the curtain, just shh. Srila Prabhupada stepped in. Shh. And Krishna consciousness started that way, in this time warp. But as soon as it was rolling on its own steam, then the warp closed back up again. And everybody went back to the dense ignorance of money making and all this other business. So, it did nobody any good, therefore nobody does it anymore. There are no more movements like this. Maybe there's a movement to save a couple of whales and save some teddy bears, and that's all right. Whales gotta live too. The teddy bears gotta live too. But so bad about the cows. They're killing hundreds of millions of billions of cows every year, but there's no Save the Cow movement. Now there's a Save the Cow movement in America. We started it, so now it's going on. It's a very, very good movement. It's getting more famous. There's this Don't Eat Animals movement. That's going on. But all these other weird movements. So, this is life. At the end, the real point is if people are Krishna conscious, then they'll stop killing others. If you just take one government and replace it with another, that doesn't help. Because when the new government comes in, the first thing you do is shoot everybody else who was against them. Then another group comes in, makes revolution. What do? The first thing they do is line up all the enemies and shoot them. So you can have revolution day and night. You'll just end up with less people, that's all. It doesn't help. The only thing that helps is when people get to the point of becoming Krishna conscious. Then automatically you stop killing people. Then automatically you stop killing cows. Then automatically you stop killing other forms of creatures. And you want to just help people. Automatically. And if one doesn't get that feeling automatically, then he's not very Krishna conscious. As it will be described in the next verses, 13, 14. The first line of text 13 is, one who is not envious, but who is a kind friend to all living entities. And text 15, he for whom no one is put into difficulty, and who is not disturbed by anyone. Krishna is talking about who is dear to him. Such persons who are working for the actual sake of others, such persons are actually renounced. Renounced from the desires for sense gratification, renounced from the desires of getting things for themselves. Fruitive activity. And that is the real helper of people. That's a real revolution. It's a revolution in the heart of man. That revolution is much more important than any such revolutions of military might or economic tricks. This is a revolution in the heart. When every person starts to realize that he is a spirit soul and the next person is also spirit soul. And somehow we've got to work things out so that everything can go on. In a Krishna conscious arrangement, even somebody may be terrifyingly obnoxious. He may be acting separately, but he has his place to act. So long as you do not cause trouble to others, you may get a place to do your activities. That's the principle Maharaj Yudhisthira displayed. When he created all of these boundaries, it was he who created boundaries and put different classes of man in different geographical locations. Because in these different geographical locations, they could work amongst themselves in their own kind of culture. Like in one place, he made a culture he made a geographical arrangement where all the thieves were situated. And that way they could steal from amongst themselves. And because it's socially acceptable in the society of thieves, they didn't mind. I don't want to make trouble by telling you where all these places are. We even have examples of this in the modern time, Australia was created that way. All of the criminals in England, who the English didn't want to bother keeping in their jails because there was too much trouble to feed them, they put them on boats and sent them to Australia. Did you know that? So the whole continent of Australia is made of criminals. They're all descendants of criminals. Which is amazing, because Australia is one of the most peaceful places. So it doesn't, anyway, time goes on and things change. But these different designations were there just to keep peace. And amongst those who could develop higher categories of knowledge, they were becoming Krishna conscious and actually developing good qualities so that they could relate very nicely with others in a very proper way. In other words, real renunciation is something which is beyond one's own self-interest. And to get to the point beyond one's own self-interest, one has to understand what is actually to be done and what is actually not to be done in this world. And simply making all kinds of trouble for others is not something which is going to get one very far. As soon as you make trouble for others, then the other makes trouble for you, and you get bound up fighting. And everything is ruined. Therefore, Krishna is recommending that if you can't become Krishna conscious, where you're supposed to be able to give up the fighting tendency immediately, by not giving any trouble to others, then at least become self-situated. Don't get involved in the entanglement of the material world, fighting with others in hatred and love and all these dualities. Don't simply engage yourself in the envious condition that one has towards another in this material world as soon as somebody wants to get something from somebody else. As soon as you want to get something from somebody, immediately there are going to be so many disturbances because he doesn't want to give it to you. And as soon as one gets in trouble, starts to make trouble with somebody else, and he makes trouble to you, and then his friend gets on his side, and your friend gets on your side, and there's a whole battle. So, to avoid all of this and to actually do something for others, one should simply act without any attachment to the results. And if he doesn't want to give to Krishna, then he can just give to some charity and get freed from the attachment to the material world. But when he observes all these charities and sees what they're doing in fact, and sees how it doesn't make the slightest difference, sees how it doesn't improve the world at all, then at that time he will begin to understand that the real service to mankind, the real charity to others, is to make them Krishna conscious. To actually bring Krishna consciousness to everyone's heart. We may not make nations Krishna conscious. After all, a nation is made of all kinds of persons, including demons. But if we can make individuals Krishna conscious, then they will be happy. If individuals can become Krishna conscious, then they will be happy. And then the more and more individuals become Krishna conscious, the more and more they'll want to live together. And that means those who don't want to live with them are of another category, and they'll be living in separate places, and life will go on, etc. Those who are intelligent understand all. Those who need more of a spelling out, sorry. But Krishna consciousness is a system by which more and more devotees come together and strive to act for the sake of Krishna and make Krishna consciousness the predominant consciousness within the heart. Predominant consciousness within the heart. When Krishna consciousness starts to predominate within the heart, then that community of Krishna conscious persons is one wherein everyone is working for the benefit of others, for the benefit of the whole society, and for the benefit of the world who is not Krishna conscious. So what to speak of renunciation? That is just simply the basis. Renunciation is just the basis upon which all activities take place. Everyone, whether you are a householder, a brahmachari, a sannyasi, or anything else, nowadays we have quite a few different categories. Our whole basis in Krishna consciousness is to simply act for the sake of helping others. That's real renunciation. That's the whole preaching mood. In fact, let us say somebody's got his room with his wife and children. Okay. Somebody's living in the brahmacharya ashram. Okay. Of course, that's also rare nowadays. Mainly they try to find a hole somewhere to crawl off into and call it their own. The old brahmachari spirit seems to be lacking. But in any case, both are working for the sake of spreading Krishna consciousness. Therefore, both are in fact renounced. If you compare to the materialists, both are renounced. I mean, at least somewhat renounced. Of course, compared to really renounced persons, not terribly renounced. But if we're working for the sake of spreading Krishna consciousness, that's the renunciation that we are striving for. Lord Chaitanya's movement was based on that. Bhaktivinoda Thakur exemplified that when he said that grihe tako bone tako soda hori bolo dako. You just chant the holy name of the Lord, whether you are in the forest or you are at home. And the Lord Chaitanya himself said, Kiba vipra kibinyasi kene sudrahoy. If you are a learned brahmana, or a sudra, or a sannyasi, the real point is that you give Krishna consciousness to others. So we are, in fact, not terribly, when it comes right down to it, insistent on any particular ashram status or varna status or any of these things. Just whatever's comfortable, just take it. But the real point is that one must utilize his valuable energy and human form of life for working for the benefit of others, without being involved or entangled in political movements or social movements or economic movements or military movements or scientific movements or any kind of movements, which are different form of bowel movements. But in fact, joke, laugh. Thank you. But in fact, you can't go on, if you don't have a little some response. But in fact, one should be engaged in the real movement, the movement of Srila Prabhupada's books, from the lagar to the hands of the peoples. That's the real movement. The movement of transcendental knowledge from the mouth to the ears of the ignorance. And the movement of prasadam to you-know-where. This is real movement. And that movement will purify the hearts of man and make them very nicely situated in very happy spiritual existence. Gradually, little by little by little. That's what we're trying to do. So are there any questions on this subject matter? What's wrong with being overactive? What does overactive mean anyway? How can you be overactive when you're distributing? What does it mean? Well, that's different. That's not overactivity. That's the wrong kind of activity. Fruitive activity. Fruitive activity, of course, is there, but it's better to work fruitively than not to work at all. Because at least if you work fruitively, then you can give the results to Krishna. But if you don't work at all, then you've got nothing to show. You have no results to give, and you didn't have any love and devotion, so you're really way out. So better you work with fruitive desire and give the result to Krishna than you don't work at all. But better, after a while, you become purified and work with the sake of satisfying Krishna and give all the results to him too, of course. So from the platform of ignorance you can accomplish nothing. But at least from the platform of passion comes an action. And from action you can take up the process of yoga and become purified. But from purification you must develop to the mode of goodness in due course of time. And don't worry if it takes a couple of years. After a while it will come, that you won't be attached. And you will do it just for the sake of Krishna. It's natural. If you're working for Krishna for years, then you have to develop that mentality. But better you work with fruitive mentality, but give the result to Krishna, than you don't do it at all. So never be afraid of being overactive. Because if you're so-called overactive, then you're useful. And if you're lethargic, thinking that you're renouncing your passion, then you're useless.